Hi, welcome to my class on creativity. I'm hoping to bring the arts, both in writing and in painting, to each of you in a way that is fresh and inspiring. Today I want to talk about the poem The Curator by Miller Williams. It's a very interesting poem because it's a narrative poem, meaning that it's trying to tell a story. And the narrator is basically the author, and you have a lot of confidence that they're going to be a reliable narrator of this story. It's based in Leningrad, Russia, and it's during the invasion of Germany when they're waiting for the Germans to come. They are in the fantastic, beautiful museum, the Hermitage, and they know that bombings and different forms of destruction, flooding from water, rain, anything, could hurt the paintings. So as they hear the Germans are coming in, he tells us that they take the paintings out and then they ship them all around southern Russia. And you can read in the poem, they just leave the frames because they believe it'll be over in a week or two, and they'll put the paintings back and they will have saved a step because they will remember exactly where each painting is supposed to be in the museum. Well, long story short, days pass, 900 days pass, and soon they encounter people waiting outside the backstage door, so to speak, and they are wanting to see the paintings. So they have to break the sad news that the paintings have been taken away, only they can see the frames. And so it starts with 3, and then it goes to a dozen, and then it goes to 30. They start bringing crowds into the museum, and the curators that had been pretty tied to their script began to have to shut their eyes and remember the content of the paintings and describe it with a lot of pizzazz and interest and maybe even intrigue. Why does this model pout? What color is here, and why do the roses not work there? And they just begin to be more animated in their discussion of the painting that's missing. And so Miller Williams begins to say that the most unusual part of this is that blind people would start coming to take part in the way that they walked through the museum, and they started calling this the Unseen Collection. All that is lovely. But we've got a lot to think about towards the end of the poem. He says, the paintings finally were returned. They were back in their proper place. In essence, the curators could go back on script and just read by the book what, the elites maybe in the art world wanted them to say about the paintings. And even the most unusual part of that is that the blind people chose not to return because they couldn't see the paintings. So what does that mean? And what does it mean when he says at the end of the poem, there are times where there is a confluence and then there are times when there's not? A confluence is when 2 rivers of the same size basically meet, and it's a meeting of the waters. And so he's basically saying, out of the blue, the absence of the paintings was part A, but it was met with a heightened awareness of the paintings, and those 2 rivers came together for this unusual time frame to mean a lot to the people in Leningrad. And so this made me start thinking about memory. And I talked to my friend Julie and Karen. We were both on a Zoom call this morning, and we started talking about memory. Can you remember a time when you enjoyed shutting your eyes and remembering an event more than always taking the picture and recording it in detail, or always looking at the TV for the footage on TV? We've become dependent on digital media, and that's a help and a hurt, but the poem basically says sometimes in the absence of something we begin to cherish what it means to us. This certainly happened during the pandemic when we were in lockdown or quarantine. There would be things that we would have never thought about, such as how fun it is to wait in line outside the Ryman and see friends, and it's not an inconvenience to wait a while to get through the turnstiles and get your hand stamped to go into a concert. And it's not a pain to walk up, the wooden steps to the Ryman Auditorium here in Nashville. Why? Why is that we're craving it now? Because we've been absent from that experience for over a year. And so absence basically heightens our sensory memory. An old country preacher named Fred Craddock drove home this point really well. He said that his mother and father had planted a tree when he was born in a parsonage where his father worked. And, a couple of years he was, moved to a different location. The whole family packed up and moved. And he never made it back to Georgia until late in his life. But he said all of his life, every year at different anniversaries, he would remember that tree, and he imagined how many limbs it had and how full it was and the shade that it would provide. And he went back finally late in life to ask the owners of the property about the tree. And they said, oh my goodness, that tree was cut down, maybe when he was 4.5. It had never had its length of time to prosper the way he had imagined. But his great closing punchline of his sermon was that he had lived 70 years under a shade of that tree. But we can live in the shade of an imagined reality. And by that, we can stand at a painting and remember how it made us feel. Wallace Stevens, the great poet, said he doesn't know which he prefers more, the whistling or the innuendo. And he said very clearly, is it the blackbird that I hear exactly, or is it the moment after the blackbird sings? Do I like the reality perfectly recorded, or the innuendo of kind of how it made me feel? So my challenge for you today is to read the Miller Williams poem and think through what it would mean for you to look at one item in your house and look at it for 2 or 3 minutes, and then close your eyes and try to recreate all the textures and the colors and what it means to you. Because in that process of slowing down and even having to see it and record it in your memory, you relive it in every possible way. Your neurons of the colors are firing, the time that you bought this item or put it up, hung it up, the memory of who gave it to you, the stories around the history of the item. All of that is available to you when you close your eyes. But sometimes when you just look directly at something, it can become rote or mundane, and you stop seeing what's really there. That's all for today. Thanks.